I thought I was ready. I researched everything, I followed forums online, and I even listened to my doctors. But there is nothing that prepares you for the life and journey of IVF. There are things that I wish I knew prior to starting IVF 3 years ago, but IVF is a roller coaster, and there are so many things that go into it that if you are doing IVF now, these are the things that I wish I knew prior to starting. And so now in this video, I'll be sharing them with you so that you are better prepared to start your IVF journey. One of the things that I was not prepared for when it came for IVF was the shots. There are so many shots at different stages of the IVF process. So I'm gonna go over a few of the shots that I have taken personally through all my different stages in doing IVF the past 3 years. So the first set of shots that you are going to be taking are shots if you are going to be doing a IUI or a more modified natural cycle. An IUI is an intrauterine insemination, and so that's when you would work with your medical provider on when you're going to ovulate. And then the first shot they will give you, depending on your protocol, will be a trigger shot. And this is the pregnancy hormone to help ensure that when you ovulate, there are enough pregnancy hormones so that when they insert your partner's semen and the semen gets to the egg, it has enough of a boost in order to become pregnant. Now, that is, of course, not always a surefire way of it working, but that was one of the shots that I was not prepared for. It is a timed shot, so you have to take it at a certain time. If you miss that window, it can cause delays. And when you come back to the office, if you take it too early, you can miss a window of when you're going to ovulate. So that was something that I wasn't really prepared for because of the pressure that comes with making sure that you are literally doing what you're supposed to do so that you do not miss the shot window of taking the trigger shot. And you have to do something like a frozen embryo transfer or an egg retrieval. This is the next phase of shots that I was not prepared for. With an egg retrieval, what happens is they are stimulating the follicles that you have in your body. They want you to grow as many as possible because every possible follicle that grows is a chance of having a mature egg, and only mature eggs can turn into embryos once they are fertilized. So that process includes several medications to help stimulate you, medications once you get to a certain point in your stimulation process to prevent you from ovulating early, and then again the trigger shot. So you could be taking up to 4 or 5 shots per day just to have an egg retrieval. And then if you go off to have a fresh or frozen embryo transfer, that's where the next sets of shots come in. And I'm going to talk about my different type of shots. We've only done frozen embryo transfers, so I'm not exactly sure how it works for fresh, but because of my age and just timing, we already have a child. So doing a frozen embryo transfer just works best for what I got going on. So if you are doing a frozen embryo transfer, there are 2 types of protocols. One is a natural cycle, and then another is a modified, and I am doing both currently. So with the first FET that we had that led to me having a miscarriage at 7 weeks and 1 day, even though that transfer was successful, leading up to the transfer, I had to take estradiol, which is estrogen, and then I had to take, you'll hear the term PIO, which is progesterone and oil. Some people are able to take progesterone orally, or they can insert it. I had to take it through the shot in my butt. That is not fun. And the needle is really long. I will insert some clips of just me doing the shots in general. And this was back in 2024 when we had our first frozen embryo transfer. And that process was a lot too, because when you're taking PIO, you are taking it through the entire first trimester of your pregnancy, unless your medical provider tells you need to take it longer time, you have to take it at a certain time frame. If you miss a dose, you have to tell them. If you overdose, you have to tell them. So there's just a lot with the shots that I wish I had known prior to. And now we're in the process of getting ready to do our second frozen embryo transfer. And so that protocol is slightly different. I'm going to be on a more antihistamine or an anti-inflammatory protocol. So I've had to change my diet so that it's anti-inflammatory. You might have heard of the Mediterranean diet. So I'm following something similar, but for Black people, of that version of a diet. And then on top of that, I'm going to first have to take a blood thinner called Lovenox. And then I will, in addition to having to take the blood thinner, I will have to also take Pio again. So I'll be shooting myself in the stomach as well as shooting myself in the butt. Yeah. So there's just a lot with the shots that I just did not know. And if you have to take the shots by yourself, you have to ask a lot of questions just to make sure that you're not overshooting. By now, I have been, shooting myself with the shots for several years. So I'm pretty good at how to, taught my skin to shoot them. But I have an IVF series here where I go into my diagnosis and just my feelings of IVF. So if you want more information about my personal journey, step by step, I will link it here and in the description box below so that you can watch that video. The next thing that I did not know about IVF that I wish somebody had told me is that it is not a quick fix. Just because you do IVF does not mean you're going to leave with a baby. I mean, we've been doing it for 3 years. And even though our first FET, I became pregnant, I miscarried. And then the year prior to that, I became pregnant and I miscarried. I had a chemical, but we were still doing the IUIs at that time. So it's not guaranteed. You can do all this work and you not have your take home baby. So that's something to keep in mind too, that during this journey, you can do the work. You can lose the weight, you can get the surgeries, and it can still take a long time before your end goal of having a baby. Even if you PGA test your embryos, that does not guarantee that they are going to make it to live birth. I know that over 35, it is recommended to PGA test embryos. You don't have to. There's research to show why you should, and there's research to show why you shouldn't. We personally did PGA test embryos that we did for our second egg retrieval, and we were not able to use those. But for the third egg retrieval, we did not PGA test that embryo. And that is the one that we are hoping is the take-home baby. So there are just options in between PGA testing and not PGA testing. The very first embryo that we transferred that I was pregnant till 7 weeks, we found out afterwards was chromosomally normal, even though we did not PGA test that one. I miscarried because of my endometriosis. And again, my IVF series goes more into those details. But so there's a lot of reason why people do or don't. You just have to do what's best for you and the recommendation of your doctor, depending on your age and how many embryos you are able to collect per egg retrieval will also kind of determine what is best for your situation. I can't really give you any feedback. We've done it and we haven't done it, and it hasn't really changed our decision either way. It just gives you more data. And if you like more data, then that's something you should do. But having a PGA tested embryo doesn't guarantee that it's going to be a live birth. The emotional toll and the labor, the invisible labor that comes into doing IVF is not really talked about either. Because everything is time, you are literally putting parts of your life on hold to try and make this baby. So for example, at night, I'm currently in the first stages of re-stimulating my ovaries. I was on Lupron for 3 months. Just so if you don't know, Lupron is a medication that's typically given to women who have a lot of inflammation like endometriosis, endomyosis. So if you are prone to inflammation in your uterus, they may prescribe you with Lupron Depot. It is an intramuscular shot that my doctor administered monthly for 3 months. Some people do it for a month, some people do it for 6 months, 9 months. So it just depends on what your doctor will recommend. But what it does is it puts your body into temporary menopause to hopefully bring down all the inflammation so that when you do a transfer or when you're trying to restart your uterus, things are calm enough so that you're able to get pregnant and stay pregnant. Again, even with this is not a guarantee, but it's the emotional labor with that too, because you do all this work, you become anti-inflammatory, you do the Lupron. It's a lot. It's a lot that goes into, now you can't go on certain family trips because you have to be around for your clinic. You can't stay long at events because you have to go home and inject yourself with medications. Some medications you can, they don't have to be refrigerated, but some medications have to be refrigerated, so you can't walk around with them all day. So that does disrupt your life. So it's things that you have to take into account, that for a period of time, emotionally and physically, you are tied to time frames and time constraints, and there's nothing that anybody can do about it. You just got to do what you got to do. And it can be hard because you'll miss out on certain events. You won't be able to do certain events. You'll have to modify. And if people don't understand IVF, or you don't have anyone in your village or community who can really support you and your partner through that, it can be very isolating. And so that is something that for a long time, my husband and I kind of held with us. We have a 5-year-old, so he also sees the shots and he's not understanding why I have to shoot myself. And, it can be very nerve-wracking for a 5-year-old to see their parent having to inject themselves. So there's a lot that goes into the labor and the emotion of IVF that I wish someone had explained to me prior to starting this journey. I mentioned this briefly, but miscarriages and IVF hit a lot harder because you knew that you had an embryo, and at one point in time there was a possibility. So when you miscarry during IVF, like my husband and I did, it's hard because it's one thing if you miscarry. We got pregnant spontaneously with my son, and then we got pregnant spontaneously in June of 2023. And so when we miscarried the 2023 baby, it wasn't as bad because it was like, oh, this was unexpected. But to plan, to do the PIO shots, to know that for a certain time frame, you have to be at this place, you can only shoot yourself in this area, and you cannot miss a dose, and the pressure that comes along with trying to be perfect so that you don't get yelled at by your doctors, or that you don't have regret, like, man, if I had just done this, then we would have gotten pregnant. There's so much that goes into it that when you miscarry through IVF, it hits harder because you put in the work to physically prepare for this baby, and it didn't work out. And of course, there's counseling. Our place, fertility center, does a really good job of offering support groups, but that doesn't take away the pain of having to miscarry and knowing that you got to 7 weeks, but something beyond your control didn't allow that embryo to continue. And so now you're at the mercy of lower grade embryos, or you're at the mercy of, look, I'm 39, I only want to try until I'm 40. So there's just a lot of other external pressures that may come up for you when you miscarry during IVF, and you may not have a ton of embryos that you can just keep reinserting. Like after this one, if this embryo doesn't take, we would have to do another egg retrieval because we don't have any more embryos. So it's things like that that you also think about too, where you can keep trying, but how many more eggs can you foster in order to make healthy embryos to continue to try. IVF is expensive. It costs a lot of money. And while your insurance may cover some, a lot of insurances don't cover any of it. Now, we have been fortunate that for the majority of our IVF expenses, we have been able to cover the majority of them. I will say out of pocket through cash, we've probably spent about $10,000 to $15,000. And we were fortunate to be able to pull resources so that we didn't have to take out any loans. The most expensive part of doing the IVF process is the egg retrieval, because that requires more equipment. They're putting you under, they're using machines to collect the eggs. It's a lot that goes into it. It's like a real surgery. So that portion is way more expensive, because then they have to, if you're not doing a fresh cycle, they got to do a frozen. So you got to pay for the embryos to be on ice. So it's definitely a lot that goes into the cost of just trying to expand your family that people don't talk about too. Some people are able to take out loans. Fortunately, we didn't have to do that. And we have insurance that covers the majority of what we've got going on. We've been doing this for 3 years, but a lot of people aren't that fortunate. So it's also very expensive. And if you are going to do it, just think about where you're going to get the money from. And if you have to take out a loan, how you're going to pay it back. Because they will, front you the money in the beginning. But if you have to do several rounds of egg retrievals in order to get your take-home baby, I don't know. I think it varies per state, but you could be spending 20 grand per egg retrieval. That's a lot of money if you have to do it 3 or 4 times. So that's something to keep in mind too, if you are interested in trying to go the IVF route. One of the last things that I will mention is you will need a lot of support. And it's hard because when you are doing IVF, a lot of people aren't doing IVF, especially a lot of people that in your immediate circle. They're not doing IVF. So it can be challenging trying to tell your parents or your sibling or your best friend about what you got going on, because they did not experience that. They don't have kids. They didn't experience that when they were having children. So there's no real way of them to relate to you when it comes to doing IVF. Therapy, exercising, talking to your partner is cool, but I do think having an additional support system is going to really allow you to mentally stay in the game until you reach your final destination. For a few years in the early stages, my husband and I really didn't tell anybody we were doing IVF, just because we were so engulfed in just trying to have this second baby that when we miscarried the 7-week and 1-day baby, we really took a step back and was like, there is something that we are missing, and we need to kind of take a step back and collectively pull it back together. Because we already have a child, we have a dog, we already have a family. It was hard too, because our son was going through this. And again, he is seeing, which is kind of the downside of having a child who is able to understand what's going on, because he is seeing mommy cry and that mommy doesn't feel well because she had a medical procedure, or, he's seeing all these needles. And of course he, feels sadness. He'll ask about what happened to the sibling we were talking about. So your family will need support, whether it's you and your partner or your children. Small children really pick up on what you are doing. They are as intuitive as minds are, as Generation Alpha. They are very keen on paying attention to the details, and they understand a lot more than we give them credit for. So my son, even though he may not say too much, he's observing what is going on, what is happening, how it makes him feel. And we have to take all that into consideration as well. So having a support system of people you can talk to is really going to allow you to keep going in the process. We're 3 years in and we are not giving up. We've also adjusted since we've talked to people about being realistic. I'm 39, my husband will be 41. So we are older parents trying to do this as well. And even though people are getting pregnant in their like 44, 45, I have a medical condition. And so it may not be in my best interest to push it out that far. So it's also having those conversations with your support system of how would it look if I got pregnant at 41, or how would it look if at 42, we became pregnant. So it's just really having those conversations and having the support to know that people understand what you're trying to do and they will support you through your decision. Having a good medical team to support you is really important too. If you find that you are not getting the support that you need, definitely get another opinion. Fortunately, the place that we go to, the entire team there and all of the staff have been so accommodating and understand where we are coming from. And we do sit from a different position because we do have a 5-year-old and I've been pregnant 2 other times. So again, knowing your history also allows your doctors to provide you with the level of support that you need, but definitely looking into getting a good support system will allow you to finish this off. Because trust me, there'll be some days where you're like, I cannot do this. No more, help me. I am tired. So yeah, I'm still on this IVF journey. It is not behind me. I have so much more to experience in front of me. So I'm just telling you everything that I have experienced thus far in the IVF process. I'm sharing this now because just like me 3 years ago, I don't want you to feel like you don't have anybody else who is going through this process. It's not really talked about now because of everything that is going on, but I just want you to know that you are not alone in this. There are still many of us women who are fighting to extend our families, and this is the only way because of medical reasons that we are able to do this. So you are not alone in your journey of fulfilling your family. If this video helped you, leave me a comment, girl. I'd love to hear your stories, and we can key in the comments, or you can drop a heart and I'll know that I got you. I see you. This week's vlog goes more into what I'm going through in real time as I prepare for my second FET. So you can check that out right here. And I will also list it in the description box below so that you can follow along in real time of how I am now moving forward in my next phase of my IVF journey. Thank you so much for being here and watching this video. I greatly appreciate it. You are stronger than you think, and we will get through this.